Hi, first and foremost, we give all praise to you. How about Shemi? I was Shabbat. Give us a sincere greeting, all the brothers and sisters scattered across the four corners, teaching this word with sincerity and charity. I am Brother Phineas with Prince of Power Israelites here with another short lesson. This lesson will be titled "The Heart Is Not the Mind." Through science, through thy precepts, that's Psalms 119, 104, through thy precepts, I get better understanding. We have to really go back and look at, our understanding of the heart and the mind and the connection between the two, or are the two the exact same thing, or are the writers talking about the exact same thing? And that's kind of the understanding that, I received when I first came into the walk, and I was watching videos and I was watching, people, everybody kind of agreed that the heart was the mind, and they based that on certain precepts that were brought out. I'm gonna give you a few of those precepts. We're gonna go to Mark chapter 7 and verse 21. Mark chapter 7 verse 21. We're gonna look at Matthew 15 verse 19. Also, they're pretty much saying the exact same thing, just two witnesses.
The book of Matthew chapter 15 and verse 19. For out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, theft, false witness, blasphemies. These are the things which defile a man.
So you see from them precepts, we will conclude, the heart, out of the heart comes these evil thoughts. We'll say that the heart is an organ that doesn't think. It's an organ that just pumps blood. And that pretense we got from science, from our understanding of science and understanding on the anatomy of the body, we conclude that, hey, man, the heart just pumps blood. The brain is the thing that's doing all the thinking. The brain stores to have all the thoughts and the memories stored within it. The heart has nothing to do with those things. Well, science has finally actually caught up to the Bible. What we bringing out is that the Bible is actually 2,000-3,000 years ahead of science, and that the writers, that the scribes, that our forefathers actually had it right. They was actually writing it as is. Out of the heart comes these evil thoughts, that your heart actually does think, that your heart does have these certain neurons and certain neurites that the brain has, and they pretty much have the same functions, but it may do things a little differently, and there's a communication actually between the two. So we're gonna look at this short little clip, and then we may jump into the article, or I may give you a precept before that. But let's look at this short clip real quick, and then I'll be back.
How could we have gone so long without recognizing what this discovery is telling us? Well, the discovery itself is that scientists now recognize we have within our hearts about 40,000 specialized cells concentrated in a very precise way in our hearts. The specialized cells, they're called sensory neurites. Sensory neurites, that's a very technical term. It means they're essentially brain-like cells, but they're not in our brain. They're in our heart. And they are in our heart, concentrated in such a way that scientists now call these cells in our heart the little brain in the heart.
So you see the way the heart is actually communicating with the body. It has actually the same neurons, same cells that pretty much do the same function, has the same functions as the mind. And so the brain and the mind are actually communicating throughout the body and communicating with each other. So when it says out of the mind proceed all these evil thoughts, that's exactly what's happening. A lot of evil thoughts, a lot of that fornication, a lot of the things that defile of a man come from within thy heart. That's why you have to be diligent. That's why you have to be diligent in guarding it. And we're going to look at that in Proverbs chapter 20, and we're going to go to verse 27. Let's look at that real quick. Proverbs chapter 4 and verse 20. My son, attend to my words, incline thy ear to my sayings. Let them not depart from thine eyes. Keep them in the midst of thine heart, for they are life unto those that find them, and health to all their flesh. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Put away from thee a forward mouth, and perverse lips put forth from thee. Let thine eyes look right on, and let thine eyelids look straight before thee. Ponder the path of thy feet, and let all thy ways be established. Turn not to the right hand nor to the left. Remove thy foot from evil. So keep thy heart with all diligence. Guard it with all diligence. Because out of it comes the issues of life. Out of it comes those things that will defile a man. This is the importance of it, because you got to have that harmony between the brain and the heart. There's this communication between the mind and the brain. There's certain reasons why you can't get that full repentance, because the mind may be willing, but the heart, my heart ain't in it. You know, we done had those man, you ain't got the heart. You ain't got the heart to overcome. You see what I'm saying? We have those talks. We communicate that way when we speak about the heart. Man, my heart just wasn't in it, man. You know, I was just half doing it because, you know what I'm saying, my relationship, you know what I'm saying, my mind was there, my head was there, but my heart really wasn't in it. I really didn't love her like that. You know what I'm saying? We talk like that. We done had, and then not only that, the heart actually gives us certain signs. A lot of the pain, you feel that in your heart. A lot of the intuition, you feel it in your heart. You can meet a person and your heart just start racing. You're like, man, why my heart racing like this? As soon as you meet a person, because it's having reminiscing on certain memories and certain thoughts that went through your brain, that was stored there through that communication. That brain signaling to the heart saying, you know what? I remember that. I remember somebody who had them same characteristics. I'm not gonna fall for that. Let me send them a warning. But a lot of times we ignore that intuition. We ignore the heart. We chalk it up to some coincidence or heartburn. You know, we may pop a Tums for it, or we chalk it up to being nervous. But anytime you unprepared, you can't, you know what I'm saying? I know my heart used to race every time I ran into a situation where I had to be late on bills or something like that. That heart will get to racing. And a lot of times the only way to stop that heart from racing is to actually give it more information on whatever the situation is. It needs to know more information. Who is that? Is she single? Or is she married? Or you know what I'm saying? Am I going to get this loan? Am I going to be able to borrow some money from this person? How am I going to get these bills? Like, the heart is waiting for more information, or it's trying to keep you from certain things. So the heart is very important, and I want us to see that. I don't want us to just chalk the heart up to being this organ that's just producing blood throughout the body. And that's an important thing to do also. That's an important function of the body. Probably one of the most important functions of the body is to be pumping blood, because you know through the scriptures that through the blood there is life. Life is in the blood. But I want to look at this article also that I came across talking about the communication through the heart in the things that science are actually doing to try to record this and try to help and give us techniques in bettering the communication between the mind and the heart. Let's look at this article real quick.
The HeartMath tools and techniques really help you access the intelligence of the heart so we can make better choices in the moment and really navigate these stressful times. What we hear from people across the world, across all professions, is that stress, anxiety, and overwhelm are really out of hand. And a lot of this is due to so much change that's happening. And the way our brains work, we don't like change. Humans do not like change, especially unexpected change or change that we're not in control of. And as it turns out, one of the most effective ways to really reduce stress and anxiety and even feelings of overwhelm is to learn how to access the intelligence of the heart and shift the rhythms of the heart, which sends a different neural message to the brain. So one aspect of our research is really focused on developing simple, practical, user-friendly tools and techniques that allow people to really manage their stress. So a lot of people, probably even today if you think about it, have had a situation where you were being told to do something or you wanted something, but there was a deeper sense or a deeper feeling that it's probably not the best choice. So that's what I mean by that lack of alignment. And that can really be a huge source of stress for people until they learn how to really get the alignment between the heart and brain, which is where coherence comes in. That's when the heart, mind, and emotions are aligned and working together harmoniously.
So we got to see that the heart and the mind are communicating with each other. These are vital tools. You know what I'm saying? This is vital information, and we have to get that understanding. We can't be just chalking up that anytime the heart in the scripture, the heart is actually doing something like thinking, or the heart is producing thought, that we can't chalk that up to, nah, they just really talking about the mind. We can't do that, because we're missing something. We're missing a vital tool that's going to help us within our repentance, because we have to get that aligned. We have to get the heart, the soul, and the mind in alignment with the will of the Father. That's how we going to endure. That's how we going to endure, because our mind may be willing, but our heart, we may not have the heart for it. And again, that's how we talk. Man, my heart just ain't in it, man. You know, I just wasn't feeling it, man. You see what I'm saying? Because that's where a lot of that feeling come from. That's where a lot of the intuition come from. That's why the heart start racing so fast. That's where that stuff be coming from. And then you can go back through your life and you know certain incidents where that heart was just racing. I don't really want to, you know what I'm saying, give you all my testimonies through it, but I know it's certain events where my heart was just, I was just crumbling, and it was trying to tell me something. Then I just open the door to just devastation, just like, oh, that's what you was trying to tell me. But I didn't know how the heart actually operate. I thought it just pumped blood like everybody else. Let's look at Joel chapter 2 verse 13.
The book of Joel chapter 2 and verse 13. And rend your heart and not your garment, and turn to the Lord your God, for he is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and of great kindness, and repenteth him of all the evil.
See, rend your heart, not your garment. Tear your heart, not your clothes, man, because out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, fornications, idolatry, adulteries, right? And these are the things that defile for man. These are the things that will make your garment unclean. That will make your garment, that will blemish your garment. So those are the things. So you need to tear your heart. That's why the Most High in the Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 31, you can read a couple verses down, talks about the new covenant and us giving the Most High giving us a new heart that's gonna have the law, statutes, and commandments already in it, where they'll already be on our heart, and nobody has to teach us, because the heart actually stores certain memories. The heart actually stores it's a storage unit also. It's a storage unit also. It's also a receptor. It's also sending out signals. It's also an antenna. And it's also producing certain feelings, sending off certain signals, giving us certain things to help us with our intuition. But we got to start trusting our heart. But before we can trust the heart, we need to purify it. We got to know that out of it comes these evil things. And we have to understand that we have to guard it. And we got to guard it diligently. We can't be letting these idle words and these idle conversations and these television programs and the radio stations and this cardinal music and secular music. We can't let these things get inside of us and get inside of our heart and be stored there. We can't allow that to continue to happen. Once you realize the importance of the heart, it'll cloud a lot of things. It'll cloud a lot of things. Let's look at Proverbs chapter 23 and verse 7.
The book of Proverbs chapter 23 and verse 7. For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Eat and drink, saith he to thee, but his heart is not with thee.
See, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. You are what you think in your heart. We can't chalk that up to that talking about the mind. There's something deep inside of you that thinks you're something. Your mind may want to say you may be on top. See, that's why I say a lot of people, that's how people commit suicide. They have everything. Their mind will tell them, man, I have everything. But inside of them, they be like, man, you're a loser. That's why a lot of people in depression. And pretty much we looking at them like they got everything. What do you mean? Why are you depressed? Just like the Edomite Robin Harrison, Robin something, but he ended up killing himself. Comedian, dead Miss Doubtfire. You wondering, you know what I'm saying, what's going on? But inside that heart is sending a whole different signal, and that's why a lot of the depression comes in. A lot of the people being called bipolar and that whole nine. They just ain't aligned. The heart and the mind aren't aligned. And there's certain things that are still being stored there, certain toxic thoughts, you know what I'm saying, toxic images that are being stored in there that are continuing to keep us in this iniquity, keep us in this sin, and eventually just keeping us in this captivity, man. Keeping us in this captivity. Now let's look at some of the precepts that have the actual heart and the mind in them. So we can't say that they're the same thing, because it has the heart and the mind in them. And that's one of the first great commandments. It's Matthew chapter 22, verse 37. Let's look at that.
The book of Matthew, chapter 22, and verse 37. And Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment.
So you got to love me with all thy heart, all thy soul, all thy mind. That heart got to have it. That heart has a part. The mind has a part. The soul has a part. We can't say they're the same thing. They have some of the same functions, but they aren't the same thing. They have to be aligned. They have to be aligned. It's like having two tires, and then I don't know if you ever had a axle break on a tire where the tire the tire's not pretty much ain't connected to the car no more. So when you turn the wheel, one tire going one way, but the other tire ain't connected. So it's just pretty much you gotta tow that car. That car's not moving no more. You move that car, that wheel will just run off, and that's what's happening, man. A lot of our hearts are just running off, and that's why a lot of us falling out of this thing, man. Mind in it. Still saying we Israelites, but the heart not there. The heart's not there. And so somebody got to come repossess that heart, tow that heart, man, reform that heart, receive a new heart, so we can get back realigned. Let's look at another one in 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 35.
The book of 1 Samuel chapter 2 and verse 35. And I will raise me up a faithful priest, that shall do according to that which is in mine heart and in my mind. And I will build him a sure house, and he shall walk before mine anointed forever.
You see, the perfect heart, willing mind. You need to have a blameless heart, a pure heart. That's why the Most High loved David. He found a man whose heart is after his, man. It's after the Most High. That had a heart that was after the Most High. That was one of the most important aspects that the Most High seen within David. We have to understand it. We have to understand the importance of the heart, and understand that it has its own role. It has its own role, and we have to get that thing in control. We have to get control of it. Let's look at another one in the same. It's pretty much going to be about the same thing in 1 Chronicles chapter 28 and verse 9.
The book of 1 Chronicles chapter 28 and verse 9. And thou, Solomon, my son, know thou the God of thy fathers, and serve him with a perfect heart and with a willing mind. For the Lord searcheth the hearts, and understandeth all imaginations of the thoughts. If thou seek him, he will be found of thee. But if thou forsake him, he will cast thee off forever.
All right, see it again. Perfect heart, willing mind. The heart gotta be blameless. The heart gotta be ready to receive the seed, and the mind gotta be willing. You gotta have a willing mind. You gotta be willing to be able to do it. Now we're gonna look at this this last 5 minutes. We'll look at this clip where you'll see where a heart, and this is just this stone proof here, this stone solid proof. It's hard to get around this. You're gonna see a heart being transplanted into a girl, and the thoughts from the donor who gave her the heart are actually transferred to the recipient of the transplanted heart. And she starts having these reoccurring dreams. Watch this clip.
In a very precise way to awaken these functions. Before we get into that, I want to share with you some examples of how real these cells and their function really are. It was very common for medical doctors and scientists. They would go to conferences And they would share with other scientists and researchers and doctors their experiences in heart research, or for the doctors, sometimes heart transplants. And it was common for stories to arise where a recipient of a heart a successful recipient of a heart, would begin to assume different characteristics of personality and different qualities of the way they thought about themselves and viewed life after the heart transplant from what they had before the heart transplant. So one of the first stories, for example, it was a woman received the heart. She knew it was from a male, and typically the donor information is not shared with the recipient. Typically, that information is sealed in the courts. It can be discovered, and there are ways to do it, as you'll see, but it's not commonly done. So the woman's transplant was successful. And when the doctor came to check on her, and he asked her the question, he said, "How do you feel?" She said, I feel fine, feel great. She says, "I'm hungry." And the doctor said, "Okay, I'll have the hospital bring you some food." And she immediately, she recoiled. She says, "I don't want hospital food." She had very specific kinds of food that she was asking for, and what makes this interesting is that they were types of food that she had never.
You've probably heard that a HELOC is a good idea. So what is a HELOC?
Eaten in her life before she received this heart. Very specific kinds of food, and there was only one place where this food could be found, and that is at a fast food restaurant that is called KFC. KFC is the only food that would satisfy the cravings that she was having. Well, after she was released from the hospital, she wanted to find out whose heart she had. The records were sealed, but she did little personal investigative work, and she went through some obituary columns. It was a small town. She was able to go back, and she found that the heart she had received was from a man who had died in a motorcycle accident, and she was able to track down through the obituary his family, his parents, and go to talk to them to find out about the man's life whose heart was now in her body. And during that conversation, what she found is this man's favorite diet was KFC. And when doctors hear things like that, they say, isn't that a coincidence? Isn't that interesting? And then they go on to the next transplant. Well, this has happened time and time again, and it has been written off as anecdotal. That is, until one particular story changed everything. This is a story that happened in a small town in the Midwest. It was a story of an 8-year-old girl who received the heart of another little girl who was only two years older, a 10-year-old girl. And the heart transplant was successful. And typically this is what happens. The doctors will try to match the heart from the donor to the recipient within a range of ages, so that a very young person isn't getting the huge heart or the older heart of a very older person. So the young girl, she received the heart, the transplant was successful. But something happened almost immediately. She began having a dream, a reoccurring dream, and it was a bad dream, so we would call it a nightmare. And she began having this nightmare over and over and over again. It wasn't every single night, but it was multiple times a week. It was common enough that her doctor recognized that something else was going on. And it was something that was out of his realm of expertise. So the doctor said, "I've done my job. I've given you a new heart. It is successful, and now you can go live your life. And I think you need to speak with someone else about the dreams that you're experiencing." So the doctor set her up with a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist recognized immediately this wasn't a typical dream. It had the characteristics of a memory. The question is, whose memory? Whose memory was this little girl having night after night? So they brought in a forensic artist so that the girl could detail to the artist all of the clues and the memories that she was having as she was going through this dream. And the dream is very similar every single night. So the artist came in, and the girl began recounting the dream. And here's what she said. She said, the dream always begins at night, and she's in the woods, she's in a forested area, and she's running very fast because someone is chasing her. A man, a big man is chasing her. And she's running fast in the dark, and she trips and she falls onto the earth. And the man catches up with her and he begins to assault her. He looks her in the eyes as he is assaulting her, and he said very specific words to her. She recounted these words to the forensic artist, and then the man killed her. He took her life. So the artist now has an image, a rendering from the girl's memory in the dreams of the man that she saw, and the artist now has the words that the man was speaking as he was taking this girl's life. It was a small town. And this information was put out to the authorities in an All Points bulletin, and it wasn't long before they found a man that matched the description. And when they brought him in, under questioning very quickly, he broke down and he admitted that he had actually killed the girl. He admitted taking her life. And here's the key. When the questioners, when the interrogators were asking him the details, he recounted the very words to them that the young girl had shared with the artist that were revealed to her in her dream. It was based on this evidence that the man was accused, he was tried, he was convicted, sentenced, and he is now serving time for the murder of this young girl. And it is only possible because the memory of the girl who was killed preserved in the cells of her heart that are now in the body of the new recipient, the younger girl. And she was able to share those memories with the authorities. And I'm sharing this story with you for one reason. That is how real the memory is in our hearts. It's not a metaphor. It is a literal storage of impressions, of memories that we all have.
So you see that those thoughts that were stored led to the conviction of the murderer of the donor of that heart. Those thoughts, the last thoughts that she had, the last memory she had, her getting murdered, was stored in her heart. That's why your heart has certain responses to certain people. It has certain responses. It has certain intuition in it. And we have to, once we align that, once we learn how to align that heart and that mind with that soul to the love of the Most High, to the will, to being a servant of the Most High. Come on, Israel. But with that, we're going to say shalom. Until next time, like, subscribe, comment. Shalom.